The Mystery of BELICENA VILLCA. Second Book. The Letter of BELICENA VILLCA. 14th Day. About Muhammad, I will only point out here, that if it was imposed to the faithfuls of the Islam the obligation to orient themselves daily towards the black stone of Kaaba, and the holy war, as a form to comply with God, was due to he knew the principles of the Hyperborean wisdom. Because an oriented warrior is an adequate definition for the Hyperborean initiate. Surely the esoteric wisdom of Muhammad was diverted or not understood by their followers. Anyway, even though they were not totally understood, the simple action of the principles of the Hyperborean wisdom is enough to transmute men and populations, to neutralize the degrading pacifism of the cultural pact. In this way, when Muhammad died in 632, almost all Arabia was in power of the Caliphs. In 638, fell Syria and Palestine. In 642 Egypt, in 643 Tripoli, and in 650 all Persia. At last, the Roman civilization lost Africa. In 698 Carthage was destroyed. In Spain, the king Ida had to convoke the 17th Council of Toledo urgently, which was gathered in the church Santa Leocadia, in November 9th of 694. The motive was the next. The African city of Ceuta, in front of Gibraltar, was the unique Christian era that still resisted the Arab advance. At the head of the same was Earl Julian, vassal of the King of Spain. The resistance of Ceuta depended exclusively on provisions that the Hispanic Goths sent to them. Well, the Ceutis had discovered something terrible. The Hebrews of Africa were negotiating the Arab invasion of Spain, with the support of their peninsular brothers. Once arranged the price for the betrayal, the Jews of Spain would provide to the Saracens all the necessary information, and of their personal collaboration, to assure the success of the invasion. Naturally, the chosen people hate either Mohammedans or Christians, but their prophetic strategy prescribes that must be confronted each other until they finally be dominated by them. Thence, it was the turn to destroy the Christian kingdoms of Europe. When these news arrived to the king Ida, who belonged to the enemy clan of the high nobility and the clergy, that's to say, pro-Jew, he had no other choice than to gather the council and to expose the case of high treason. This time were 4 bishops of the house of Tarsus, to defend the cause of the spiritual Christianity, and of the Hispanic Goth culture. Is ardently debated and finally is opted to act with major rigor. All the Jews of Spain will be submitted to the enslavement and their goods confiscated in favor of the Visigothic state. It is clear that these measures were not harsh but flexible due to, not applying the death sentence against the traitors, was only achieved to give them time while they would continue conspiring. 15 years later the Arabs would return them all their old possessions and would concede them a prominent place in the society, in retribution for their services. The party of the high nobility and the high clergy, supported by the lords of Tuxvelta, was reunited around the family of the defunct King Chindasvinta. The party of the progressist monarchy was gathered around the family of the King Uanda, who died in 680. Ejika, who was member of Uanda's family, arranged the succession to the throne of his son Watize, who started to reign in the year 702. Meanwhile, in the Baetica, governs the Duke Roderick, from Chindasvinta's clan. When Watize died in 710, the Ulregia of Toledo, where those from the party from Chindasvinta, one majority, proclaims new king to Roderick. Despised the sons of Watize, at the same time, governors of provinces and functionaries, for what they consider a dispossession, asked the Jews for an interview with the general, Musa bin Ser. In the meantime, they revolved the Tarraconenses, the Narbonenses and the Navarre, obeying Roderick, to concentrate all his forces in the north to suffocate the uprising. These campaigns caused the interruption of the supplies to Ceuta, the result rapidly crushed by the Arabs. Finally he goes to Africa, that embassy of traitors. It was integrated by the sons of Vitaizay, Elmont, Edabast and Aquila, and the brothers of the deceased king, Sisbrit, and the Bishop of Seville, Oppas, who was accompanied by the great rabbi of Seville, Isaac. Incredibly, Earl Julian, who entered to the service of Musa, after his cession of the area, and influenced by a personal enmity with Roderick, advises the Arab general to intervene in Spain. Musa promised them sending help to overthrow Roderick. The traitors return and simulate to pact the peace with the king, who not distrusted. In 711, the Berber general Tariq transported 4 ships an army composed by Arabs and Berbers, and disembarked in Gibraltar. Roderick, who was still fighting against the Basques in the north, had to cross the country to cut the pass of Tariq, who was on way to Seville. The battle took place in the shores of the Guadalquivir River. The Rose of Roderick are in command of 2 columns and the brothers of Vitaizay. When the encounter took place, the traitors Sisbrit and the Bishop Oppas passed to the side of Tariq, leaving King Roderick in a compromising position, and after many days of combats, the Visigothic army resulted completely annihilated by Tariq, remaining unknown the fate of the last Visigothic king. The help given by the Arabs and Jews to the followers of Vitaizay would not redound in benefit of these, because the next year the general Musa, at the head of a more powerful army, would initiate the conquest of Spain. In a few years the whole peninsula, except for a small region in Asturias, would fall in his power. Spain was converted in such way, in an emir dependent of the Caliphate of Damascus. Although, as the Christian reconquest advanced, the Arab dominion decreased, the Baetica remained occupied for more than 500 years. For the House of Farsis, the Visigothic catastrophe didn't accuse other effect than the immediate loss of the political power. The Counts of Tuxvelta returned to be the Lords of Farsis, who had already ample experience surviving to similar situations. They were completely conscious that for the moment not existed in Europe a military force capable to expel the Arabs from Spain. The Emir al-Muhajjir, who governed between the years 718 and 720, achieved to cross the Pyrenees, and to take the city or Narbonne, attacking from there the Frank territories. Only the noble Pelagius resisted them, and achieved to maintain a region under the Christian dominion in the mountains of Canterbury and the Pyrenees. From this nucleus would appear in the kingdom of Asturias, to which later, in the 10th century, would be added Leon and Castile, and would be formed in the 9 Catalonia and Navarre, and in the 11th century, Aragon, by successive reconquests of territories to the Arabs. But in the year 732, the Emir of Cordova, the Ed al-Rahman, was moving loosely through the Gaul and was conquering Bordeaux. Only the decision of Charles Martel would avoid the conquest and destruction of the Frank kingdom. But was also clear, since the year 737, that to the Christian states, resulted impossible to go across the Pyrenees to Spain. Thence, the supposition of the Lords of Farsis was very realistic, as also was their strategy to face the circumstance. Immediately they understood that the Arabs only respected 2 things, the force and the wisdom. Who resisted them with enough courage as to wake up their respect could obtain concessions from them. And only the admiration that they experimented for the wisdom, and for those who had it, allowed them to tolerate the religious differences. One thing was a Christian and otherwise Christian. To the first was necessary to force, to embrace the Islam, was what the Prophet ordered, and second to convince him of the Islamic truth, luring him without prejudice to the Arab culture. Since then that the Lords of Farsis decided to show friendly with them and to demonstrate, conclusively, that they formed part of a wise family. This attitude not constituted a betrayal to the Catholic religion, because the Lords of Farsis continued being pagans. That is mean, they continued sustaining the cult of the cold fire, and due to the majority of the Goth Hispanic population, now called Mozarabs, was integrating little by little to the Arab culture, adopting its language and religion. The Lords of Farsis would become an exponent of the knowledge on its highest level and would be for centuries teachers of the Arab learning centers, of Seville and Cordova, obtaining for this collaboration, and for the economic contributions of the village of Tours, the right to profess the Christian religion and to maintain as private temple la Basilica of Our Lady of the Grotto. The members of the chosen people, as it is logic, took advantage of their influence to encourage persecutions against Christians, and especially against the House of Tarsus, during all the time that the Arab occupation lasted. However, loyal to their Talmudic principles, they tried to continue with their corrupting task in detriment now of the Arab society, what meant that the Saracens, achieved the objective of conquering Spain, would forget soon their favors, and would submit them to periodic persecutions.